you hear me okay? Thanks for being around for the end of the day. My name is Schroeder. Two quick caveats. I just got off an airplane, so if I'm a little bit punchy, bear with me and everything else. And secondly, I'm going to talk a little bit something different than I think you folks have talked about in the Health Summit, which is about consumer-facing internet and health. And I'm not a health guy per se, though I just ran what was one of the largest social networks in health in the United States called Health Central, which we just sold back in December. So I've had, by definition, an opportunity to see a lot about human behavior and how people are thinking about health. And I will say, as a parenthetical, I think there's an enormous opportunity in the region for folks who are thinking about engaging with people in this powerful way. I remember I started Health Central about 5 or 6 years ago, and a very good friend of mine who was the head of marketing for WebMD, which is the largest portal in the United States for health, kind of a classic content portal. And he called me up and he said, "Welcome to the industry where nobody wants to come visit your websites." And the point he's making, because you laugh as you understand it, and health is a very unique kind of experience. I mean, at one level, there's nothing more crucial than health for all the obvious reasons that we understand. But yeah, I'll tell you, man, in the internet, this is not music, this is not dating, this is not sports, this is not film. The engagement is a very, very different engagement. And almost regardless of the circumstances by which people come to health experiences, there's not a little amount of fear and a great deal amount of uncertainty in the experiences. And what I have found that very often health seekers online are often what I'll call lean back. They're not trying to get in there and join the social conversation early on. In fact, it was amazing when we started to open up social conversations, which I'll come back to in a second, really almost to the level of 400 to 1. People would come and watch the conversations, but would refuse to participate in any kind of a way. And so it's important because at one level, people deeply define themselves about health. So when we formed Health Central, what we really did was launch about 50 websites, which were condition specific and then social again. There was some content created that people were sharing things overall. But I remember learning in the first couple of months of, for example, our breast cancer website, I thought that breast cancer was narrow enough. But what we saw was that our audiences of women began to separate almost instantly. So in other words, if you're a woman between the ages of 28 and 32, it's not that you don't care what a 65-year-old survivor has been through, but for all intents and purposes, you really don't care what a 65-year-old survivor has been through. You'd like to find other women your age, maybe young children, a well-intended but annoying husband, and you want to be able to talk to people and find content and information, I think, in a very, very powerful way. At the same time, well, that identity is so important. What I found in my experiences, people really can't stand to be defined by their health. That's a little bit different, and of course pregnancy is a very special kind of a case. You're getting in shape or running a marathon, that's a different case. But in most health issues, at the end of the day, people know they've got it, they know they have to wrestle it, but they don't really want to think about it. There's a very funny and not so funny word in the United States that the pharmaceutical companies talk about all the time, which is called a drug holiday. And what a drug holiday is when people, even with not only chronic conditions, but almost terminal conditions, at some point stop taking their meds. And why do they do it at the end of the day? Because I think in the end, psychologically, they're like enough. It may be because of the symptoms, but I think it's really more psychological. I need to take control. For today, I'm going to stop taking my drugs. For this week, I'm going to stop taking these drugs. And so again, you're defined by your illness, but you refuse to be defined by your illness. And I think this is something that's very, very important. I believe strongly that health online is in part about the clinical. If people are sick or if you're looking to lose weight or whatever it is, you care about the science and the doctors. But I'd like to leave you with this thought, which is the clinical is only a small fraction of what it is to be in health. It really is about the human contact, the human interaction, how you live your life on a day-to-day basis. Should I tell my children I've been diagnosed with a very serious disease? Do I tell my coach I'm injured, but I'm not sure how injured I am? How do I live my life in that kind of a powerful way? And these are very different things, because you talk to your doctor or a nurse about science, but you won't necessarily talk to your friends, you might. But you'll talk to your friends about how to live your life on a day-to-day basis. You may not necessarily talk to your doctor, so it's very, very important. What we're seeing in the United States, as you guys well know, because it's global in many ways, is that content isn't just about publishing anymore. Content, I think, is really as much about being a platform. At the end of the day, it's good to have good content that tells you clinical information and definitions. You should be able to search and get informed. But what gets very powerful, I think, is the ability to have connections with people who have been there. And that's really where my company, Health Central, plays. We really were effectively a feeding ground where people could come from all over the country, and in fact all over the world, in condition specifics, and share stories and ask questions, and help each other live their life on a very, very day-to-day basis. There are lots of human behaviors that motivate why we're online every day. We want to make sure we miss nothing. We want to make sure maybe we're a little bit smarter than everybody else. We want to make sure that people care what we think, and so we can share things and have a big ego and get a high cloud score, or have a lot of people follow us on Twitter. That's all good. Those human behaviors are important in health as you think about building health experiences online. But I think there are three fundamental behaviors which are more profound and perhaps unique to health, which is something to think about as you think about creating ventures in this area. And those three behaviors are, I'm not alone, I'm not crazy, and someone like me took action, and because they did and it worked, I can do the same thing. I'm not alone, meaning am I the only person feeling this way? No, there are thousands of people feeling this way. I'm not crazy. Should I really be worried about what I'm worried about? Yes, you should, because other people like you will tell you that. And by the way, three, other people took an action, which means I can take an action. I can fire a doctor. I can actually step up and make changes. I actually have some control in this whole thing. Well, it's a very, very powerful proposition. In the United States, a very popular term, which has become kind of a cliche, is patient empowerment. And that's actually what I think patient empowerment is the ability to say that we've got the ability, all of us, to stand up and do things which are very powerful. Mobile and content associated with mobile, of course, is revolutionizing this for all the reasons you guys know. I think mobile, at the end of the day, as we all know, really are simply just computers on our person. So they replicate those kinds of experience. But there are unique things to mobile and health, which I'm looking at in very, very powerful and interesting ways. If you want to track what you're doing, you can do it. It can be monitored very, very quickly and easily. You can share that information, or you can play games with it. You can ask quick questions. You can have the quick convenience of finding things which are near you, and you can buy things. And so there's a whole other slew of content engagement and content as a platform that has, just by the act of being mobile and moving forward, overarchingly. And I think it's incredibly exciting. Just the last couple of words about the big question on all things in the internet, which is monetization, which of course is a very hard thing. My company was a media company, so we relied on internet advertising, in particular pharmaceutical advertising, for what we did. The United States is a little bit unique in that pharmas are allowed to advertise to consumers, which is not the case in many, many parts of the world. And it's ironic, really, because it's almost as if the internet was created for targeted advertising, because you don't get annoyed if you get a relevant message, and obviously the performance is that much better for people overall. But it's tough in conditioned health. It's a good business, but even in the States, it's not a great business overall. I find that in the broader life health, the second line of the business that's doing very well has been in places like Baby Center or fitness and communities like Spark, and games and trackers like Runkeeper. These are also doing a little bit of advertising in more broad advertising ways, so they're not under the restrictions of pharma as I described them. But they're also trying very interesting things with freemiums, attracting you to start using a tool and share it with other people, and then slowly begin to upsell you $1 at a time, $3 a sign, $5 at a time, and I think that's very interesting overall. Third area, which I think everyone's talking about now across the entire spectrum of business potential for the internet, is in data. And data also now is becoming something of a cliche, but I think it's very powerful. If you strip away the cliche aspect of data, what you really are talking about is relevance. At the end of the day, can you put something in front of someone they didn't even know they wanted, or is right up their sweet spot of what they want to do? I don't know how many of you guys use GoNabbit or Win Social or Groupon or any of the others, but I have to tell you, if I get one more cupcake offer, I'm going to go crazy. But I will tell you this also, that if someone started to show me offers based on my actual buying behaviors, the things that I actually do, i.e. based on my data, I will buy stuff every single day. The pure act of Amazon simply doing a mini version of this, and those who buy this, buy that, probably has increased my consumption 30 to 50% a year on Amazon, and I don't think that's any issues like that here. And so I will tell you that with time, with all the privacy and permission issues, if people can find messaging or find research or find capabilities which are really relevant to me in my stage of my life, I think it's going to be very, very powerful and very awesome. There's a company in the United States called Patients Like Me, which has been gathering a lot of very targeted data and information. They don't connect it to names, but they can actually sell that data to marketers and other people in the health space that have made a nice business out of it. It's kind of an example of where that comes forward. I think there's going to be a huge play in health everywhere around the world in what I call non-obvious connections. And I'll give you a quick example about that. At Health Central, we were incredibly sophisticated about the long tail parts of search. People who are searching not 1, 2, or 3 words, people not searching diabetes, but the average search string coming to us was 9 words. And we had people who came to us who wrote 32 words. You become so comfortable with technology, you talk to them. You know, it's like talking to your girlfriend or your spouse or whatever it is in that area. And all of a sudden, I saw about 6 or 7 months ago, we started getting hit over and over again by people who were searching some combination of jumping, running, and trampolines. And I really couldn't for the life of me figure out what this could possibly be. I assumed the problem in our algorithm wasn't working well. And I dug into it, and what I realized is if you're asking about jumping and running and trampoline, you're training for running, but you're worried about joint pain. So ever using the words joint pain or ever using the words osteoarthritis, folks were in fact articulating very, very powerful and very specific needs. And that's what I mean about unobvious connections. When people start to think about the way people use words or behaviors that they take and start having surprises, I can assure you there's going to be real money there, whether it's in the advertising side of it or selling that insight to other people or having ways that people can engage on it on their own terms and take it in a very, very powerful way. So I think it's very, very powerful to look at it in this kind of a way. I'll tell you one last kind of observation. This will sound obvious, but I think it's important throughout the internet, but it's just profoundly important in health. And that is, as you think about creating experiences or looking for great experiences, I cannot encourage you enough to be the patient that you seek. To be the patient that you seek. And it has never ceased to amaze me how people throughout the internet create experiences for their own justification, but don't really stop and think about how I would use it from a UI perspective, from a data perspective, from a sharing perspective. How does it make my life simply better, easier, faster, cheaper, more beautiful, more efficient in the way that happened before? Believe it or not, in the United States, for all the kind of Luddite natures of pharmaceuticals, and forgive me because I know there are folks here from pharma and all, but every pharmaceutical brand has Twitterers, and I've met every one of them. And I've asked every one of them one question. And it's, I think, a very revealing question. And that is, I've asked them, if you stop working for your company, will you follow yourself on Twitter? And literally every person, to a person, this is 80 people, said, no, why do you ask? And I said to myself, okay, so how relevant is your tweet? Are you doing this because some executive told you you have to tweet? Or are you in fact creating an experience that if someone cares about the condition, it's going to be useful to you? Be the patient that you seek. Build and think about a product that you've created them almost in terms of product in and of themselves, because I think that's something that's very, very powerful. So we're still in the early innings. If you guys have followed the space in the United States at all, you'll see that WebMD stock is lower below what its IPO was 7 years ago. There's a lot of stagnation, but there's also a tremendous amount of innovation that is coming our way. And I can tell you that anything that touches every single human being, everything that is necessary for every human being, is going to be a pretty big business at some point, anywhere in the world. So I hope it's interesting, and thanks for listening to me.